Did ancient people really believe in gods, monsters, and magic the way we imagine? Now, this is the standard modern assumption, right? But that assumption might be wrong. Modern historians often treat ancient myths as primitive religion or superstitions and such. However, there is another possibility. Ancient people may have been using symbolic language to explain real processes. As of course is the claim in The Secret of the She-Bear. Let me give you an example. If some extraterrestrials, or rather aliens if you like, arrived on Earth today and they saw our flags, our traffic signs, our military uniforms with their insignia and so forth, they would perhaps assume that these are religious objects. But we know perfectly well that these are just, functional symbols. So what if ancient myths worked the same way? The first thing we have to understand is that our ancient forebears, they lived much closer to natural cycles than we do today. Sure, we too see birth, death and seasons and such, but they saw it much more intensely. They saw birth, they saw death physically in front of them. They, of course, saw the seasons, they saw decay, renewal, they saw animals hibernating to a much larger degree than we do, and of course they saw plants dying and returning. So they knew perfectly well that the world clearly operates in cycles. Nothing just disappears. Life is transformed, metamorphosed. Also, they could perfectly well tell through observation that children resemble their ancestors. Traits persist. Families carry these patterns across generations. So the continuity of life was obvious long before science existed. They knew these things perfectly well. Instead of starting with mythology, with myths and such, let's look at what people actually did. Archaeology shows consistent burial practices going back tens of thousands of years, all the way back to the Neanderthals. For example, red ochre was used in burials, in the age of the Neanderthals, as well as in modern times. They would carefully place the bones of the dead. This is consistent practice throughout time. Skulls were treated differently from other bones, as well as the femur, the thigh bone. They had some type of burial mounds. If you look at the pyramids, it's a type of burial mounds. If you look at the New Grange, it's a burial mound. If you look at, they all had these burial mounds. We also see that the graves were revisited and reopened. So for some reason, they entered the graves. There is always animal symbolism in these burial mounds, especially related to bears. And the midwinter ritual is connected to all of this. And these practices appear repeatedly across large regions and long periods, all over Eurasia, really, and in North Africa, of course. So, what kind of worldview makes these practices meaningful? Like I mentioned some symbols already, and symbols are not superstition. They are a type of language. A symbol compresses a complex idea into a simple image. I'll give you some examples. The skull symbolizes the memory or identity of a person. The femur, the thigh bone, symbolizes, along with the symbol of blood, life itself. A cave symbolizes the end, enclosure, or a transition to something else. A tree symbolizes connection and growth and transfer of knowledge. And I know they claim that these ancient symbols were a type of writing, but I'm not going to discuss that. Instead, I'm going to claim that symbols are and still are, of course, useful in societies, especially if you don't have a writing system. They make the ideas memorable, teachable, and repeatable across generations. So symbols are tools for thinking. If we now talk about myths, we notice some patterns. I am a pattern noticer, remember that. And some common myth elements are entering caves, fighting serpents or dragons, floods, twins where one person die, the tree of life, repeated death and rebirth cycles. And these motifs appear all over the place, in Europe, in North Africa, and in Asia, and in North America as well. Probably in South America, I haven't looked into that. And the possible interpretation of this is that they describe a natural and biological process through a metaphor. For example, the cave is the end, but it is also the origin. The flood is the transitional moment. The serpent is the connection of life or energy. The twin is the pair structure when one supports the other. The tree is the nourishment and connection. So, myth does not have to be literal. You don't have to understand it literal, and it doesn't have to have meaning when taken literal. It is a symbolic explanation. So the cave becomes the womb of the mother. The flood, the transitional moment, is when the water comes, and this signals birth, of course. The serpent is the umbilical cord that is connecting you to the placenta. The twin is the placenta, one that supports you until it has to be killed for you to live. And the tree, again the placenta, is what nourishes you and connects you to your ancestors. And now we are entering the core of the subject here, namely the concept of reincarnation. But we should understand this term properly. Reincarnation does not necessarily mean that a soul is flying from one body to another. It can mean something simpler. For example, it is a continuation of a life pattern through generations. Traits, tendencies, identity recur in descendants. And in this sense, life returns, but not as identical individuals, rather as a renewed expression of an earlier pattern. And this interpretation aligns perfectly with what we observe biologically. And modern scholars misunderstand this because they see the exoterical part of this, namely the one that we chose to those who are not so-called initiated. Because the purpose of all of this is to understand the myths. Just like in ancient Greek philosophy, you have a dialogue, and the purpose of the dialogue is to create understanding. And the purpose of the myth is the same, and you have to understand the myth in order to so-called become initiated. There's nothing mystical about this, but I'm going to use the Santa Claus example where the children believe Santa Claus is real, but then you have to understand at one point in life that it's actually just a charade. And when you have understood this, that is an initiation. If you are an outsider looking at this culture, the people in that culture is going to tell you the exoterical version, not the esoteric initiated version. So, and this is what the scholars see when they read books about it and such. They are looking at the exoteric version. So that's one of the reasons why they to a very large degree misunderstand and misrepresent it when they talk about it. I think this ancient worldview is relevant because it changes how we think about identity. Instead of viewing ourselves as isolated individuals, we see ourselves as part of a long chain of life. Our traits come from the past. the distant past. Our actions shape the future. The past lives on through us. We are our forebears. We will become our descendants. So as I see it, ancient myths were not about describing supernatural events. Not at all. They were a symbolic way of explaining the cycles of life, and in a sense a scientific worldview. The myths of our ancestors are not childish stories. They are early philosophical reflections on continuity, identity and renewal. And talking about reincarnation, when you look at it from a scientific point of view, or from a modern point of view, if you like, we can tell the same as our forebears did through observation. Some children resemble their ancestors, and there seems to be some sort of pattern here, in the sense that some individuals resemble those ancestors and some others resemble some other ancestors. So no, I don't think the ancient peoples really believed in gods, monsters and magic the way we imagine it, or the way the scholars present it. These were symbols, and they had a deeper meaning. And it was related to what we would call reality. And the core problem here is, of course, that the scholars that look into this material are only exposed to the exoteric worldview of our forebears, and therefore they are unable to find out what it is really all about. Now, as some of you might already understand, this is related to Socrates and his conviction. And I'm going to talk about that, maybe not in the next episode, but in a future episode in this series. So stay tuned, and thank you for listening.